The words left her lips before she could stop them. Raw and desperate in the cold throne room that smelled of stone and old blood, Lyra Novak had never imagined she would find herself kneeling on marble floors in front of the most dangerous creature in the modern world. But desperation made cowards brave and the sensible reckless. Her brother's life hung by a thread thinner than spider silk, and she was the only one who could cut him down or let him fall. "Please," she whispered again, and the word echoed in the cavernous space. "Please spare him." The Vampire King sat motionless on his throne, carved from obsidian and inlaid with silver that caught the light from the chandeliers hanging overhead. His white hair fell past his shoulders like a waterfall of moonlight, and his skin held the pallor of death and eternity. He was beautiful in the way that winter was beautiful, all sharp edges and lethal grace. His name was Valdren Thorne, and he had ruled the vampire covens of North America for 3 centuries. Lyra had heard the stories, everyone had. In the modern world, humans and vampires existed in uneasy balance, a treaty signed 50 years ago after technology had made hiding impossible. Vampires had their territories, their blood banks, their laws. Humans stayed out of vampire business, and vampires kept their killings to the criminal underworld and the willing. But there were rules, ancient and absolute, and her brother had broken one. She didn't know all the details. Theo had called her 3 hours ago, his voice shaking, telling her he'd done something stupid, something unforgivable. He'd gotten involved with a vampire's claimed human, a woman named Sarah who worked at the blood bank. Theo hadn't known she was claimed, hadn't known that touching her would be seen as a challenge, a threat. The vampire who claimed her had reported it to the king, and now Theo sat in a cell somewhere beneath this Gothic mansion, waiting for judgment. "You come before me without appointment, without introduction, without offering," Valdren said, and his voice was like black velvet draped over steel. "You kneel on my floor and beg for mercy, but you have not yet told me why I should grant it." Lyra lifted her eyes to meet his. They were crimson, bright as fresh blood, and looking into them felt like falling. She forced herself to hold his gaze. "Because he didn't know. Because it was an honest mistake. Because he's young and foolish and he deserves a chance to learn better." "Ignorance is not innocence," Valdren replied. His long fingers drummed once against the arm of his throne, the only sign of movement. He wore a black suit that looked like it cost more than her car, tailored perfectly to his tall frame. Everything about him spoke of power, control, ancient authority. "Your brother approached a claimed human in a place of sanctuary. The blood bank is neutral ground, protected by treaty. His actions could have sparked conflict between covens. But they didn't," Lyra said quickly. "Please, Your Majesty, he made a mistake. Let me make it right. I'll do anything." The moment the words left her mouth, she knew she'd made an error. Something changed in Valdren's expression, subtle as a shadow crossing the moon. He leaned forward slightly, studying her with intensity that made her skin prickle. "Anything," he repeated softly. Around the throne room, other vampires stirred. Lyra hadn't let herself look at them before, too focused on the king, but now she felt their attention like cold fingers on her spine. There were perhaps a dozen of them, all beautiful, all pale, all watching with predatory interest. She recognized the vampire court for what it was, a den of immortal politics and power plays where one wrong word could be fatal. "I didn't mean," she started, but Valdren raised one hand and she fell silent. "You offered anything," he said. "I accept." Panic fluttered in Lyra's chest. "What do you want?" "Your brother's crime requires punishment. The vampire who made the claim demands satisfaction. I could execute him, which would fulfill the law. I could banish him from all vampire territories, which would make him an exile, unable to work or live in any major city. Or," he paused, letting the word hang, "I could offer him mercy as you request, but mercy has a price." "Name it," Lyra said. Though her heart hammered against her ribs, Valdren rose from his throne in one fluid movement, descending the steps toward her. He moved like water, like darkness, and Lyra had to fight the instinct to scramble backward. He stopped 3 feet away, looking down at her where she still knelt. "You will stay here," he said, "in my household under my protection and authority. You will serve as my personal attendant for 1 year. At the end of that time, your brother's debt will be considered paid, and you will both be free to leave." The words didn't make sense at first. Lyra blinked up at him. "You want me to work for you?" "I want you to belong to me," Valdren corrected, and there was something in his tone that made heat rush to her face. "You will live here in the mansion. You will attend to my needs, whatever they may be. You will learn our ways, our laws, so that you can ensure your brother never makes such a foolish mistake again. And in return he lives. He returns to his normal life, unharmed and unmarked. Do you accept?" It was a trap. It had to be. Vampires didn't make generous offers, and Valdren Thorne hadn't held power for 3 centuries by being kind. But what choice did she have? Theo was her little brother, barely 22, working his way through community college and trying to build a life. He'd made a mistake, but he didn't deserve to die for it. "If I refuse," she asked, needing to know, "then I will pass judgment according to our law. Your brother will be executed at dawn. His body will be returned to your family with my regrets that he could not learn the respect our kind requires." The casual way he said it, like he was discussing the weather, sent ice through Lyra's veins. This was the reality of vampires. They were beautiful and sophisticated and utterly inhuman in their cruelty. "I accept," she said, and her voice only shook a little. Valdren's lips curved into something that might have been a smile on someone less frightening. "Then rise, Lyra Novak. You are now under my protection and my command. Break the terms of our agreement and your brother's mercy will be revoked. Serve well and you will both be free when the year ends." He extended his hand to her, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it. His skin was cold and his grip was gentle, but she could feel the strength in it, the easy power of something that could crush bone without effort. He pulled her to her feet as if she weighed nothing. "Take her to the East Wing," Valdren said to someone behind Lyra. "See that she has appropriate rooms and clothing. She begins her duties tomorrow evening." A female vampire appeared at Lyra's side, this one with white hair cut short and eyes like amber. She wore modern clothes, jeans, and a silk blouse, and her smile showed just a hint of fang. "This way, human." Lyra wanted to ask to see Theo to make sure he was really going to be released, but the vampire woman was already guiding her toward a side door. She glanced back once and found Valdren watching her, his expression unreadable, and then she was through the door and into a corridor lined with paintings of people who were probably long dead. "I'm Seraphine," the vampire said as they walked. "I manage the household staff. You'll answer to me for practical matters, but your true responsibility is to the king. Understand?" "Not really," Lyra admitted. Her legs felt shaky and her mind was still trying to catch up with what had just happened. "What does he need a personal attendant for?" Seraphine laughed, a sound like wind chimes. "You'll learn. The king hasn't taken a human attendant in 50 years. This should be interesting." They walked through the mansion, and Lyra tried to memorize the route. The building was enormous, a Gothic revival structure that looked like it belonged in a European fairy tale rather than the outskirts of Seattle. Modern elements blended with old-world architecture. LED lighting in antique sconces, security cameras disguised as gargoyles, ancient tapestries hanging beside contemporary art. The East Wing was quieter, more residential. Seraphine opened a door and gestured Lyra inside. The room beyond was larger than Lyra's entire apartment, with a massive 4-poster bed, a sitting area, and floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the mansion's grounds. The decor was rich without being overwhelming, all deep blues and silvers, and there was a door that led to a bathroom that looked like something from a luxury hotel. "You'll find clothes in the wardrobe," Seraphine said. "The king prefers his attendants to dress well. You're expected to be available from sunset to dawn, which are his waking hours. During the day you're free to do as you wish, though you may not leave the grounds without permission. Meals will be brought to you, or you can eat in the human staff kitchen on the first floor." Questions? Lyra had about 1,000 questions, but she settled on the most important. "My brother, when will he be released?" "He'll be escorted home within the hour," Seraphine said. "The king keeps his word. Always." She moved toward the door, then paused. "A word of advice, human. The king is fair, but he's still a predator. Don't forget what he is, no matter how civilized he seems. And don't develop feelings for him. Humans who fall in love with vampires rarely find happy endings." Then she was gone, the door closing softly behind her, and Lyra was alone in a room that was both a prison and a sanctuary. She sank onto the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. The events of the past few hours felt surreal, like a nightmare she couldn't wake from. She pulled out her phone and called Theo, but it went to voicemail. She left a message telling him she loved him, and that everything was going to be okay, even though she wasn't sure she believed it. Then she lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling, wondering what she had just agreed to, and whether she would survive the year ahead. She must have dozed off because she woke to darkness and the sound of her phone buzzing. Theo's name lit up the screen and she answered it with shaking hands. "Lyra?" His voice was rough, strained. "What did you do?" "What I had to," she said. "Are you okay? Are you home?" "They just dropped me off." "Lyra, they said you made a deal with the king. They said you're staying there. You can't do this. You can't sacrifice yourself for me." "It's already done," she interrupted. "1 year, Theo. I work for him for 1 year, and then we're both free. It could be worse. You don't know that. You don't know what he'll make you do." "God." "Lyra, I'm so sorry. This is my fault. I should never have stopped," she said firmly. You made a mistake. We're fixing it. I need you to promise me you'll stay away from vampire business from now on. No more blood banks, no more vampire clubs, nothing. Can you promise me that?" "I promise," he said immediately. "I swear. Lyra, please be careful if he hurts you." "He won't," she said, though she had no idea if that was true. "I'll call you when I can. I love you." "I love you too," Theo said, and he sounded like he was crying. After they hung up, Lyra got up and explored her new room more thoroughly. The wardrobe was full of clothes in her size, which was unsettling because she'd never told anyone her measurements. Everything was expensive, designer labels she recognized from magazine ads. She found silk pajamas and changed into them, then stood at the window looking out at the grounds. The mansion sat on what must have been acres of land surrounded by forest. In the distance she could see the lights of Seattle glowing against the night sky. It was beautiful and isolating in equal measure. A soft knock at the door made her jump. She opened it to find a young man with a tray of food. He was human, she realized with relief, though he looked nervous. "Dinner, miss. Seraphine said you might be hungry." "Thank you," Lyra said, taking the tray. The food was excellent, some kind of pasta and cream sauce with fresh bread and a salad. She ate mechanically, tasting nothing, and then prepared for bed. Sleep didn't come easily. Every sound in the mansion seemed amplified, and she kept imagining cold hands reaching for her in the darkness. When she finally drifted off, she dreamed of crimson eyes and a voice like velvet asking her what she would give for mercy. The next evening, Seraphine came to collect her at sunset. "The king wants to see you in his study," she said. "I'll take you there." Lyra had dressed in one of the outfits from the wardrobe, slim black pants and a deep blue blouse that felt like water against her skin. She followed Seraphine through the mansion, up a grand staircase and down another corridor. The study door was heavy oak, carved with intricate patterns that might have been roses or might have been something darker. Seraphine knocked once and opened the door without waiting for an answer. "Your attendant, Your Majesty." The study was exactly what Lyra would have expected from a vampire king. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk, leather furniture, and a fireplace that crackled with real flames. Valdren stood by the window, looking out at the night. He wore black again, simple pants and a shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, and his white hair was loose around his shoulders. He turned as she entered, and the weight of his attention was like gravity. "Lyra, come in. Close the door." She did, her pulse quickening despite her attempt to stay calm. Seraphine had already disappeared, leaving them alone. "Your brother arrived home safely," Valdren said without preamble. "I kept my word." "Thank you," Lyra managed. "Don't thank me yet. You haven't learned what your duties will entail." He moved to the desk and picked up a leather-bound book, which he held out to her. "This is the history of vampire law and custom. You will read it. You will learn it. If you are to be my attendant, you will need to understand our world." Lyra took the book. It was heavy, old, and it smelled like libraries and dust. "What exactly does a personal attendant do?" "You will manage my personal schedule. You will attend events at my side as my representative. You will learn our politics and our people so that you can help me navigate the complexities of ruling." And he paused, considering her. "You will provide companionship. I have lived for 300 years, Lyra Novak. The weight of eternity is heavier than you can imagine. You will remind me of what it means to be human." The honesty in his words surprised her. She had expected demands, orders, perhaps cruelty. Instead, he sounded almost weary. "You want me to talk to you?" "Among other things." He gestured to a leather chair near the fireplace. "Sit, tell me about yourself." It felt absurd, like a job interview with a monster, but Lyra sat. The chair was comfortable, and the fire was warm against her skin. Valdren took the chair opposite, moving with that unsettling grace, and watched her with those unreadable crimson eyes. "I'm 25, she said, unsure where to start. "I work as a legal assistant at a law firm downtown. Or I did. I suppose I'll have to quit now." "Already handled," Valdren said. "You've been given a leave of absence for family reasons. Your job will be waiting when you return if you want it." The casual display of power should have frightened her more than it did. Instead, she felt a strange gratitude. "Thank you. That's actually kind of you." "I'm not kind," Valdren said flatly. "I'm practical. A happy attendant serves better than a miserable one. Continue." "There's not much to tell. I have a degree in English literature that I'm not using. I like reading, hiking when I have time, coffee shops. Normal things. My parents died when I was 20, so it's just me and Theo now." She looked at him directly. "What about you? What does a vampire king do with his time?" Something flickered in his expression, gone too quick to read. "I maintain order among the covens. I negotiate with human governments. I ensure that the treaty holds and that our kind survives in a modern world that has no place for predators." I settled disputes, punished lawbreakers, and tried to prevent the kind of chaos that led to the vampire wars of the 18th century. He leaned back in his chair, and I watched the centuries pass and everyone I've ever cared for turn to dust. The bleakness in his voice caught her off guard. For a moment, he didn't sound like a monster. He sounded lonely. "Is that why you haven't taken an attendant in 50 years? She asked quietly. "The last one died," Valdren said. "She was human. She aged while I didn't. She spent her final years telling me it was worth it, that she didn't regret her time with me, but I watched her fade and I couldn't stop it. I swore I wouldn't do that again." "Then why am I here?" He met her eyes and she saw something in his gaze she couldn't name. "Because you knelt on my floor and begged for your brother's life. And I haven't seen that kind of love in longer than I can remember. Because you looked at me without flinching and offered me anything, and I find myself curious about what else you might offer if given the chance. Because I'm tired of being alone, and you're brave enough to be interesting." The admission hung between them, more intimate than Lyra had expected. She didn't know what to say, so she said nothing. Valdren rose in one smooth movement. "It's late, you should rest. We'll begin properly tomorrow. Read the book I gave you. Learn our laws. And Lyra?" He paused at the door to an adjoining room. "Don't fear me. I have no intention of harming you. You're under my protection now, which means you're safer than you've ever been." Then he was gone, leaving her alone with the book and the fire, and a head full of questions she didn't know how to answer. The days began to blur into a routine. Lyra woke in the afternoon and spent her daylight hours reading the book Valdren had given her, absorbing the complex history of vampire society. She learned about the covenant laws, the blood rights, the territorial disputes that had shaped the modern treaty. She learned that vampires aged incredibly slowly after their transformation, that they could survive on donated blood if necessary but preferred fresh, that sunlight burned them but wouldn't kill them immediately, that they were stronger and faster than humans but not invincible. At sunset, she would dress and meet Valdren in his study. Sometimes he would quiz her on what she'd learned. Sometimes they would simply talk, ranging conversations about books and history and philosophy. He was brilliant and sharp-tongued, and he challenged her in ways she hadn't expected. They argued about literature, debated ethics, discussed the nature of power and responsibility. Other evenings she accompanied him to court functions. The vampire court convened twice a week, and Lyra would stand at Valdren's side while he heard petitions and settled disputes. She learned to read the subtle politics, the careful dances of power among the covens. She learned which vampires were trustworthy and which were dangerous, though Valdren assured her they were all dangerous in their own ways. 3 weeks into her tenure, a vampire named Corvus challenged Valdren's decision to spare Theo. It happened during court, and Lyra felt the tension in the room shift the moment Corvus stood. He was old, she'd learned, nearly as old as Valdren, and he led the largest coven in the Pacific Northwest after the king's own. "Your Majesty," Corvus said, his voice smooth and cold, "I must protest your leniency toward the human who trespassed on claimed territory. You've set a dangerous precedent by accepting a proxy punishment. Others will see it as weakness." Valdren didn't move from his throne, but Lyra felt something change in him, a coiling of power like a snake preparing to strike. "You question my judgment, Corvus?" "I question the wisdom of allowing a human to buy her brother's life with a year of service," Corvus replied. "What message does that send? That any human can break our laws and escape consequences if they have someone willing to barter?" "The message," Valdren said softly, and his voice cut through the room like a blade, "is that I am king and my word is law. The girl offered me something I found valuable. I accepted. If you take issue with that, you're welcome to challenge me for the throne." The room went silent. Lyra's heart hammered. She'd read about challenges in the book, ancient rituals where vampires fought for dominance. They were supposed to be rare but not unheard of. Corvus smiled, showing fangs. "I merely seek to understand, Your Majesty. The girl must be very valuable indeed to warrant such mercy." His eyes slid to Lyra, and she felt the weight of his attention like ice water. She forced herself to stand straight, to meet his gaze without flinching, though every instinct screamed at her to look away. "She is under my protection," Valdren said, and there was a warning in his tone that made Lyra's skin prickle. "Touch her, threaten her, or speak of her with anything less than respect, and I will remind you why I've held this throne for 3 centuries. Are we clear, Corvus?" The vampire inclined his head, but his smile didn't waver. "Perfectly, Your Majesty." After court ended, Valdren dismissed everyone except Lyra. When the throne room was empty, he descended from his throne and approached her. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," she said, though she was shaking slightly. "Is he going to be a problem?" "Corvus is always a problem," Valdren said, "but he won't touch you. He's ambitious, not suicidal." He studied her face and his expression softened almost imperceptibly. You handled that well. Many humans would have shown fear. I was terrified, Lyra admitted. But you didn't show it. That's what matters. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His fingers were cold against her skin, but gentle. You're stronger than you know, Lyra Novak. The touch lingered a moment longer than necessary, and when he pulled away, Lyra felt the absence of it like a chill. Something was changing between them, subtle as seasons shifting, and she didn't know if she should fight it or let it happen. As the weeks turned into months, Lyra found herself thinking about Valdren at odd hours. She would wake during the day and remember something he'd said, some dry observation or unexpected insight. She would catch herself smiling at his rare attempts at humor, which were usually dark and often went over the heads of the other vampires. She told herself it was just familiarity, the natural result of spending so much time with someone. But she knew she was lying. It was harder to lie to herself the night of the autumn equinox celebration. The vampires celebrated the turning of seasons with elaborate parties, and the autumn equinox was one of the most important. The mansion was transformed into something from a Gothic fairy tale, lit by thousands of candles decorated with black roses and silver ribbons. Vampires came from across the continent, ancient and powerful, dressed in finery that ranged from historical costume to high fashion. Seraphine had given Lyra a dress for the occasion, a stunning gown in midnight blue that hugged her figure and flowed like water when she moved. Her hair was swept up, and she wore a silver necklace that Valdren had sent to her room with a note. Wear this tonight. It will mark you as mine. The possessiveness of the note should have bothered her. Instead, it made something warm unfurl in her chest. The party was overwhelming, full of predators and beautiful skin, but Valdren never left her side. He introduced her to visiting kings and queens, ancient vampires with names from history books. He kept his hand on the small of her back, a constant reminder of his presence and protection. When the music started, a string quartet playing something haunting and old, Valdren offered her his hand. Dance with me. She'd never danced with a vampire before. It was like dancing with a statue that had learned to move, cold and perfect and utterly controlled. He led her through the steps with the ease of someone who'd been dancing for centuries, and Lyra found herself following without thought. You look beautiful tonight, he said quietly, his breath cold against her ear. Thank you, she managed. You look also beautiful. Handsome. You look good. He laughed, a real laugh that made his eyes brighten. Such eloquence. I can see why you have a degree in literature. She flushed, but couldn't help smiling. Shut up, you make me nervous. I know, he said, and his hand tightened slightly on her waist. But you're getting better at hiding it. They danced in silence for a moment, and Lyra became aware of the other vampires watching them. She wondered what they saw. The king and his human attendant, an odd pairing, perhaps a temporary curiosity. She wondered if any of them suspected the truth that she was only just beginning to admit to herself. Valdren, she said softly, can I ask you something? Always. Why did you really accept my offer, the truth? He was quiet for so long that she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, because I looked at you and saw something I thought I'd forgotten. Because in 300 years, I've learned to recognize genuine love when I see it. And you loved your brother enough to kneel before a monster. Because I'm selfish, and I wanted to keep that light near me, even if only for a year. His words made her chest tight. You're not a monster. Yes, I am, he said gently. But perhaps I'm a monster who wants to remember what it's like to be something else. The song ended and another began, but they kept dancing. Lyra rested her head against his chest, and if her heart was beating too fast, if she was feeling things she shouldn't, she let herself pretend it didn't matter. Just for tonight, she let herself feel it. The attack came at midnight. Lyra was standing by the refreshment table, taking a break from dancing when she heard the first scream. The French doors to the garden exploded inward in a shower of glass, and vampires poured through, moving too fast for her eyes to follow. Chaos erupted. The visiting vampires scattered, some fleeing, some fighting. Lyra caught a glimpse of Corvus among the attackers. His face twisted with rage, and she understood with sudden clarity that this was a coup. Strong hands grabbed her from behind, and she screamed. A vampire she didn't recognize dragged her toward the broken doors, moving with inhuman speed. She fought, kicking and clawing, but she might as well have been fighting stone. Then Valdren was there. She'd never seen him move like that before, never seen the true extent of his power unleashed. He was a blur of white and black, faster than thought, and the vampire holding her simply disintegrated into ash. Valdren caught her before she fell, his arms like iron bands around her. Stay behind me, he ordered, and his voice was nothing like the cultured tones she'd grown used to. This was the voice of a king, of a predator, of something ancient and terrifying. More attackers came and Valdren met them with brutal efficiency. He moved like death itself, destroying anyone who came close to Lyra. She watched in horror and awe as he defended her, as he painted the ballroom with ash and showed her exactly what he was capable of. The fighting lasted minutes that felt like hours. When it was over, Corvus lay pinned beneath Valdren's hand, the king's claws piercing the vampire's chest just above his heart. "You attacked my court," Valdren said, his voice ice and fury. "You endangered my people and my guest. Give me one reason I shouldn't end you now." "You've gone soft," Corvus spat. "The great king brought low by a human girl. You're not fit to rule anymore." Valdren's hand tightened and Corvus gasped. "My mercy for Lyra's brother was not weakness. It was strategy. It was compassion which you've forgotten the meaning of, and it was my choice to make as king. You questioned my judgment. You challenged my authority. You've broken covenant law and attacked under a flag of truce." He leaned closer. "You're finished, Corvus." "Wait," Lyra said, surprising herself. She stepped forward, and Valdren's eyes cut to her, wide with shock. "Don't kill him, Lyra. You showed my brother mercy. Show him mercy too. Exile him. Strip his power. But don't kill him. Don't become the monster he thinks you are." The ballroom was silent. Every vampire present watched, waiting to see what their king would do. Valdren's hand remained where it was, poised to end Corvus's immortal life. Then slowly he withdrew his claws. "You're exiled," he said to Corvus. "You and anyone who followed you tonight. You have until dawn to leave my territory. If you ever return, if I ever hear your name again, I will finish what I started here. Now get out of my sight." Corvus scrambled to his feet and fled, his followers streaming after him. The remaining vampires began cleaning up the destruction, removing the ash and broken glass. But Valdren only had eyes for Lyra. He crossed to her in 2 long strides and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "You could have been killed," he said roughly. "If I'd been 1 second slower, but you weren't," she said, her voice muffled against his chest. "I'm okay. I'm safe because I got lucky." "God, Lyra, when I saw him grab you." He pulled back enough to look at her, and his eyes were wild. "Why did you tell me to spare him? He tried to kill you." "Because you're not what he thinks you are," she said. "Because mercy is strength, not weakness. And because I didn't want you to have to live with another death on your conscience." He stared at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. Then he kissed her. It was gentle despite his obvious fear and anger, his lips cold but careful against hers. He kissed her like she was something precious, something that might break, and Lyra felt something inside her shatter and reform all at once. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Valdren rested his forehead against hers. "This is a terrible idea," he whispered. "I know," she whispered back. "You're human. I'm a vampire. We have months left on our agreement. This complicates everything." "I know. I don't care," he said, and kissed her again. The party ended early, the remaining guests departing into the night. Valdren refused to let Lyra out of his sight, keeping her close as they supervised the cleanup and ensured the mansion was secure. When they finally returned to his study, the sky was beginning to lighten with the approaching dawn. "You should rest," Valdren said, though he made no move to let her leave. "So should you," Lyra replied. She knew vampires could withstand sunlight for brief periods, but it drained them, weakened them. He needed to retreat to his rooms before full daylight. "I will, in a moment." He cupped her face in his hands, studying her like he was memorizing every detail. "Lyra, what are we doing?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But I don't want to stop. Your year is almost half over. When it ends, you'll be free to leave. Free to return to your human life, to find someone warm and alive who can give you a normal future. I can't offer you that. I can't offer you anything but darkness and danger and an eternity of watching the world change while I stay the same." "I don't remember asking you to offer me anything," Lyra said. She reached up and covered his hands with hers. "I'm not thinking about the end of the year. I'm thinking about right now. And right now, I want to be here. With you." "You're going to break my heart," he said softly. "I've lived for 300 years without one, and you're going to break it." "Then we'll be even," she replied. "Because you've already broken mine." He kissed her again, deeper this time, and Lyra felt the world narrow to just the two of them. When they finally broke apart, the study windows were glowing with early morning light. "Go," she said gently. "Rest. We'll figure this out tonight." He nodded reluctantly and walked toward the door to his private chambers. At the threshold he paused and looked back. "Lyra, thank you for stopping me tonight, for reminding me who I want to be." "Anytime," she said, and meant it. The following months were the strangest and most wonderful of Lyra's life. By day she read and explored the mansion grounds, video called Theo to assure him she was fine, and counted the hours until sunset. By night, she served as Valdren's attendant in public and something far more intimate in private. They didn't hide their relationship exactly, but they didn't broadcast it either. The vampire court noticed, of course. Vampires noticed everything. But with Corvus gone, no one dared challenge Valdren's choices. Seraphine cornered Lyra one afternoon with a knowing look. "You're in love with him." "Is it that obvious?" Lyra asked. "Painfully so, and he's in love with you, though I don't think he's admitted it yet. 3 centuries of emotional repression will do that to a vampire," she sighed. "I hope you know what you're doing, human. The king hasn't loved anyone since before I was turned. If you break his heart, I'll have to kill you on principle." "Noted," Lyra said dryly. Then, more seriously, what happened? "Before you were turned, I mean. You said he hasn't loved anyone in that long." Seraphine's expression went distant. "There was a woman, a human woman, back in the early days when he first became king. Her name was Elise, and he loved her more than anything in the world. She loved him too, but she was already married, already had a life. She refused to leave her family, and she refused to be turned. She asked him to let her go, and he did. He watched her live and age and die, and he never forgave himself for not fighting harder to keep her." The story made Lyra's chest ache. "He told me about an attendant who died. That was a century later. He cared for her, but he didn't love her the way he loved Elise, the way he loves you." Seraphine met her eyes. "Your year is almost up, Lyra. What are you going to do when it ends?" "I don't know," Lyra admitted. "I haven't thought that far ahead." "Start thinking," Seraphine advised, "because that man will never ask you to stay. He'll let you walk away because he thinks it's what's best for you. So if you want a future with him, you're going to have to be the one to fight for it." The words haunted Lyra for days. She and Valdren never talked about the end of her contract, skating around the subject like it was made of knives. But time moved forward regardless, and before she knew it, there was only a month left, then 3 weeks. Then the night before her year ended, Valdren took her to the roof of the mansion. The city spread out below them, lights glittering like fallen stars, and the winter air was sharp and clean. He'd brought a blanket, and they sat together looking at the view. "Tomorrow you're free," he said quietly. "I know. I've made arrangements. Your job is still available. Your apartment has been maintained. Your brother is doing well, in case you were wondering. He's dating someone nice, a human girl who works at his school. He's been staying out of trouble." "That's good," Lyra said. Her throat was tight. "Lyra," he trailed off, then started again. "This year with you has been the best of my very long life. You've reminded me of so many things I'd forgotten. How to laugh, how to hope, how to feel something other than the weight of duty and time. I can never thank you enough for that." "You don't have to thank me," she said. "But I do have to let you go," he continued. "You're young. You have a whole life ahead of you, and you deserve to live it in the daylight, with someone who can grow old with you. I can't give you that. I can't give you children, or a normal life, or anything that humans are supposed to want. All I can offer is darkness and danger and an eternity of being tied to something that isn't even alive anymore." "Are you breaking up with me?" Lyra asked, and her voice cracked. "I'm setting you free," Valdren said. "The way I should have before I was selfish enough to kiss you." Lyra stood up, anger and heartbreak warring in her chest. "Don't I get a say in this?" "Of course you do, but I know what you'll say if I ask you to stay. You'll say yes because you care about me, because you don't want to hurt me. And then in 5 years, 10 years, you'll wake up and realize what you've sacrificed. You'll resent me, you'll wish you'd chosen differently, and I can't watch that happen." "You don't know that," Lyra said. "You're assuming how I'll feel, making my choices for me." "That's not fair, Valdren. That's not love." "Maybe not," he agreed, "but it's the kindest thing I can do for you." She wanted to scream, she wanted to hit him. Instead, she took a deep breath and said, "The woman, Elise. Seraphine told me about her." Valdren flinched. "That was a very long time ago. You let her go because you thought it was best for her. And then you spent 3 centuries regretting it. Are you really going to make the same mistake twice?" "It's not the same. It's exactly the same." Lyra's voice rose. "You're so terrified of hurting me that you're going to push me away and call it noble. But I'm not Elise. I'm not married to someone else. I'm not asking you to choose between your duty and your heart. I'm standing here telling you I love you, and I want to stay, and you won't even give me the chance to make my own choice." "You don't know what you're asking," Valdren said, and there was anguish in his voice. "I'm going to watch you age. I'm going to watch you die. I survived it once, barely, and I swore I'd never put myself through it again." "Then turn me," Lyra said. The words hung in the air between them, enormous and impossible. "No," Valdren said immediately. "Absolutely not." "Why not?" "Because becoming a vampire means dying. It means giving up everything human in you. It means an eternity of drinking blood and hiding from the sun and watching everyone you've ever loved turn to dust. I won't do that to you. I won't take your humanity." "What if I want to give it up?" Lyra challenged. What if I've thought about this, really thought about it, and decided that an eternity with you is worth more than a normal human life without you? You haven't thought about it, Valdren said. You're caught up in the romance of it, the fantasy. But the reality is darkness and blood and endless time. It's watching civilizations rise and fall. It's becoming something other, something that looks human but isn't. I won't curse you with that. So you're just going to let me leave, Lyra said flatly. You're going to watch me walk away tomorrow, and that's it, we're done. If that's what's best for you, yes. She laughed, bitter and broken. You're a coward, Valdren Thorne. You're a 300-year-old vampire king, and you're too scared to fight for what you want, too scared to risk being hurt again. You'd rather be alone for eternity than take a chance on something real. His face went pale, if that was even possible for a vampire. Lyra, no, she said. You've made your decision. I guess I've made mine too. She turned and walked toward the roof access door, tears streaming down her face. Where are you going? Valdren called after her. To bed, she said without looking back. My contract ends at dawn. I'll be gone by the time you wake up tomorrow. She didn't wait to hear his response. She fled down the stairs and back to her room, where she collapsed on the bed and cried until she had no tears left. Then she lay there staring at the ceiling, feeling like her heart had been ripped out of her chest. At some point, she must have fallen asleep, because she woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the sound of someone knocking on her door. She dragged herself up, wiping her swollen eyes, and opened the door to find Seraphine. He's asked me to give you this, the vampire said, holding out an envelope. Her expression was sympathetic. I'm sorry, human. For what it's worth, I think he's making a mistake. So do I, Lyra said hoarsely. She took the envelope. Inside was a letter in Valdren's elegant handwriting. Lyra, by the time you read this, your year of service will be complete. I have arranged for a car to take you home whenever you're ready. All agreements between us are fulfilled. You owe me nothing. I want you to know that this year with you has meant more than I can express. You came into my life like dawn breaking over centuries of night, and you reminded me what it means to feel. I will carry the memory of you with me through whatever ages remain. Please don't think I'm sending you away because I don't love you. I'm doing this precisely because I do love you. You deserve a life in the light, with warmth and laughter and all the human joys I can never give you. You deserve to grow old surrounded by family, to have the chance at happiness that mortality offers. I hope you find it. I hope you find someone worthy of you, someone who can stand beside you in the daylight and hold your hand through all the years of your life. And when your time comes, when you pass beyond my reach, I hope you'll think of me occasionally and know that somewhere in the darkness a vampire king loved you enough to let you go. Be well, Lyra Novak. Be happy. Be free. Valdren, she read the letter 3 times, and each time it hurt worse. Then she carefully folded it, placed it back in the envelope, and made her decision. She spent the day packing her things and saying goodbye to the human staff she'd become friends with. When the sun began to set, she was waiting in the grand foyer with her suitcase. The car arrived exactly at dusk. The driver, a human who worked for the vampire court, loaded her bag without comment. Seraphine came to see her off, along with a few other vampires who'd become something like friends over the past year. Are you sure about this? Seraphine asked quietly. No, Lyra admitted, but I have to try. She didn't explain further. She just got in the car and let it carry her away from the mansion, away from the years she'd spent there, away from the vampire king, who loved her enough to break both their hearts. The drive back to her apartment took 30 minutes. The building looked exactly the same, unchanged by her absence. Her apartment was clean and maintained, just as Valdren had promised. She unpacked mechanically, putting her things away, and tried to figure out how to resume a normal life after everything that had happened. She called Theo and told him she was home. He wanted to come over immediately, but she asked him to wait until tomorrow. She needed time to think, to process, to figure out her next move, because Seraphine had been right. If Lyra wanted a future with Valdren, she was going to have to fight for it. And she had a plan. It took her 3 days to prepare. She researched vampire law, called in favors from vampires she'd met during her time at court, and crafted her argument carefully. When she was ready, she called Seraphine. I need to see him, she said, officially. As a petitioner to the court, Lyra, I don't think that's a good idea. I know my rights under covenant law, Lyra interrupted. Any human can petition the vampire court on matters that concern them. I'm invoking that right. Will you arrange it, or do I need to file a formal request? There was a long pause, then Seraphine laughed. You've got steel in you, human. All right, court convenes tomorrow night. I'll make sure you're on the docket. The next evening, Lyra dressed in one of the outfits from her time at the mansion, the midnight blue that Valdren had always liked. She drove to the mansion and was escorted to the throne room by guards who recognized her but said nothing. The court was full, vampires from all the local covens present for the regular session. Lyra took her place among the petitioners and waited, her heart pounding. When Valdren entered the throne room, her breath caught. He looked exactly the same, beautiful and terrible and utterly controlled. But when his eyes swept the crowd and landed on her, she saw the mask crack. Saw surprise, then longing, then carefully blank neutrality. He took his throne and began hearing petitions. Lyra waded through disputes about territory, requests for permission to turn new vampires, reports on treaty compliance with human authorities. Finally, Seraphine called her name. Lyra Novak, human, petitions the court. Lyra walked forward on shaking legs and stopped at the base of the throne. Valdren watched her with an expression she couldn't read. "State your petition," he said, and his voice was the formal one he used for court business. "Your Majesty," Lyra said clearly, projecting her voice so everyone in the room could hear. "I petition for the right to be turned. I wish to become a vampire." A murmur ran through the court. Valdren's eyes widened. "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that I am an adult of sound mind, making an informed decision about my own existence. Under covenant law, any human may request transformation if they understand the consequences and can provide willing consent. I understand. I consent. I formally request that you grant me this." Valdren's jaw tightened. "Denied on what grounds?" Lyra shot back, echoing his words. "On the grounds that I am king and I can refuse any petition I choose." "Actually," Lyra said, "under covenant law, a king can only refuse a transformation request if the petitioner is underage, mentally incompetent, or under coercion. I'm 26, demonstrably sane in making this choice of my own free will. You have no legal grounds to refuse me." The murmur in the court grew louder. Valdren stood from his throne, descending the steps toward her. When he reached her, he leaned close and spoke quietly enough that only she could hear. "What are you doing?" "Fighting for us," she whispered back. "The way you won't." He pulled back, his expression torn. Then, louder, he said, "We will discuss this privately. Court is adjourned." The vampires filed out, though Lyra could feel their curiosity like a physical weight. Seraphine gave her a subtle thumbs up before disappearing. Then it was just Lyra and Valdren in the empty throne room. "You can't do this," Valdren said, and he sounded desperate. "I can and I am," Lyra replied. "You don't get to make this decision for me, Valdren. My life, my choice. You taught me about vampire law. You told me to learn our ways. Well, I learned, and I know you can't legally refuse me without cause." "Lyra, please." "No," she said firmly. "You don't get to push me away and pretend it's for my own good. You don't get to decide what I'm strong enough to handle or what I'll regret in 10 years. I love you. I want to be with you. And if becoming a vampire is the only way to have a future with you, then that's what I'll do." "You'll lose your humanity," Valdren said. "You'll die and be reborn as something else. You'll have to drink blood to survive. You'll never see the sun again without pain. You'll watch everyone from your human life age and die while you stay the same. Your brother, your friends, everyone you've ever known. You'll lose all of it." "I know," Lyra said. "I've thought about all of that, and I've decided it's worth it. Theo and I have already talked about it. He understands. He wants me to be happy, even if it means living in a different world than him." Valdren stared at her. "You talked to your brother about this?" "Of course I did. He's the only family I have left. I needed him to know why I was making this choice." She stepped closer to Valdren. "I love you. I want forever with you. And I'm not going to let your fear and trauma make this decision for me. So either you turn me, or I'll find another vampire who will. But either way, I'm not walking away from you. Not without a fight. God, you're stubborn," Valdren breathed. "I learned from the best," she replied. He reached out and cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle despite the strength in it. "Are you absolutely certain? Because once it's done, it can't be undone. You'll be a vampire for the rest of eternity." "With you," Lyra said. "I'll be a vampire with you. That's all I want." He closed his eyes, and for a long moment she thought he might still refuse. Then he opened them, and they were bright with unshed tears that would never fall. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not," she agreed. "But you're stuck with me anyway." He kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of promises. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Lyra Novak. I have loved you since the night you knelt on my floor and begged for your brother's life. I will love you through every century we have together. And I swear I will spend eternity trying to be worthy of the gift you're giving me." "Just love me," Lyra said simply. "That's all I need." The transformation process was complex and ritualistic. Valdren explained it to her carefully, making sure she understood every step. She would need to drink his blood first, enough to establish a bond. Then he would drain her to the point of death, and she would drink from him again. The vampire blood would kill her human body and remake it, a process that took hours and was, he warned her, agonizing. "I'll be with you the entire time," he promised. "I won't leave you alone through this." They set the date for 3 days later, giving Lyra time to settle her human affairs. She quit her job properly this time, said goodbye to friends with vague explanations about moving abroad. She spent a day with Theo, talking and laughing and crying, and made him promise to stay in touch even though their worlds would be different now. "You really love him," Theo said at one point. "I really do," Lyra confirmed. "Then I'm happy for you. Even if it means I'm going to have a vampire for a sister. That's going to be weird to explain to my girlfriend." "Tell her I'll haunt you if she breaks your heart," Lyra suggested, and they both laughed. The night of her transformation, Lyra dressed in simple clothes and met Valdren in his private chambers. The rooms were beautiful, all dark wood and rich fabrics with no windows but filled with candlelight. A large bed dominated the space, and medical supplies were laid out on a nearby table in case something went wrong. "Are you ready?" Valdren asked. "Terrified," Lyra admitted, "but ready." He guided her to the bed and sat beside her. "We'll start slowly. First you drink from me." He used a knife to open a vein on his wrist, and dark blood welled up. He offered it to her, and Lyra pressed her mouth to his skin. The blood was cold and tasted like metal and earth and something indefinable. She drank as he instructed, feeling it slide down her throat, and tried not to think too hard about what she was doing. After a few moments he pulled away. "That's enough for the first part. Now comes the difficult part." He gathered her into his arms, holding her close, and she felt his fangs pierce the skin of her throat. The pain was sharp and bright, but it faded quickly into a strange euphoria. She felt her strength draining, felt herself growing weaker as he drank. The world began to blur at the edges. "Valdren," she whispered, suddenly afraid. "I'm here," he murmured against her skin. "I have you. Trust me." She did. She trusted him absolutely. So when the darkness came, she let it take her. She woke to pain. Every nerve in her body was on fire, burning and reforming. She tried to scream, but Valdren was there, pressing his bleeding wrist to her mouth. "Drink," he commanded. "Drink and live." She drank desperately, and the vampire blood flooded her system. It fought with the dying human blood, killing and remaking, and the pain intensified beyond anything she'd imagined. She felt her heart stutter and stop, felt her lungs cease drawing breath, felt every cell in her body die and be reborn as something new. Through it all, Valdren held her. He whispered to her in languages she didn't understand, ancient words of comfort and promise. He stroked her hair and kept her grounded as her humanity died and immortality took its place. The transformation took 6 hours. By the end, Lyra was exhausted beyond measure, wrung out and remade. But when she finally opened her eyes, the world had changed. Everything was sharper, clearer, more vivid. She could hear the heartbeats of humans in distant parts of the mansion. She could smell blood and stone and the lingering scent of old books from Valdren's study down the hall. And when she looked at Valdren, she saw him in a way she never had before, saw the threads of power that made up his being, saw the depth of his immortality. "How do you feel?" he asked gently. She considered. Her body felt strange, cold and still, but somehow more alive than ever. She was thirsty, desperately so, but not for water. "Different," she said. "Hungry." He'd prepared for this too. He brought her a blood bag from the mansion's stores, medical grade and carefully warmed. Drinking it was instinctive and satisfying in a way that made her former human thirst seem pale by comparison. When she finished, she felt more herself. "Better?" Valdren asked. "Much." She looked down at her hands, which seemed paler now, and then up at him. "It worked. I'm really a vampire." "You're really a vampire," he confirmed. A smile touched his lips, the first real smile she'd seen from him in days. "My vampire, my love, my eternity." She kissed him, and it was different now, cold meeting cold, immortal meeting immortal. But the love beneath it was the same, warm and real and absolutely certain. The following weeks were an adjustment. Lyra had to learn to control her new strength, to navigate the world as a predator rather than prey. She had to learn to manage her thirst, to hunt responsibly, to understand the rules that govern vampire existence. Valdren was patient with her, teaching her everything she needed to know, and Seraphine proved invaluable as a mentor. She called Theo regularly, video chatting during his day and her night. He was fascinated and a little disturbed by her transformation, but he kept his promise to stay in touch. "You look different," he said one night, peering at her through the screen. "Paler, and your eyes are red now, part of the package," Lyra said. "Do I look scary? A little, but you're still my sister. That's what matters." At the vampire court, Lyra's transformation caused ripples. Some vampires approved, seeing it as a sign of strength that she'd chosen immortality. Others were suspicious, worried about a former human gaining influence with the king. But Valdren made it clear that Lyra was under his absolute protection. and that any challenge to her would be seen as a challenge to him. 3 months after her transformation, Valdren called a special court session. Lyra stood at his side as he addressed the assembled vampires. "For 300 years I have ruled alone," he said. "I have led our people through war and peace, through the revelation of our existence, and the negotiation of the treaty that allows us to survive in the modern world. But I have done so without a partner, without someone to share the burden and the eternity. Tonight that changes." He turned to Lyra and took her hand. "Lyra Novak came to me as a human, begging mercy for her brother. She stayed as my attendant and taught me to feel again. She chose transformation and immortality for the chance to stand beside me. And now I ask her to stand beside me not just as my companion, but as my queen." The throne room erupted in murmurs. Lyra's eyes widened. They'd never discussed this, never talked about titles or official positions. Valdren knelt before her, and the sight of the Vampire King on his knees sent a shock through every witness. "Lyra, will you marry me? Will you share my throne and my eternity? Will you be my queen in my heart for as long as we both exist?" Tears sprang to Lyra's eyes, though they would never fall now. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." He rose and kissed her, and the court broke into applause. It was unprecedented, a vampire king taking a bride so newly turned, but Valdren's will was law, and no one would challenge him. The wedding was held a month later, a grand affair that blended human traditions with vampire customs. Theo walked Lyra down an aisle lined with black roses, giving her away with tears in his eyes. Vampires from across the world attended, bearing witness as Valdren and Lyra spoke vows that bound them for eternity. "I promise to stand beside you through every century," Valdren said, holding both her hands. "I promise to love you when you're strong and support you when you're weak. I promise to share the darkness and find light in your presence. I promise to never let you face eternity alone." "I promise to love you through every age," Lyra replied. "I promise to challenge you when you need it and comfort you when you'll let me. I promise to be your partner in ruling, your companion in immortality, and your anchor in the endless night. I promise forever." They sealed their vows with a kiss, and when they broke apart, Lyra was wearing a crown of silver and diamonds, marking her as queen. The years that followed were full of change and challenge. Lyra learned to rule beside Valdren, adjudicating disputes and navigating vampire politics. She proved to be a natural leader, combining her human compassion with her new vampire strength. Together they reformed some of the harsher covenant laws, established better protections for newly turned vampires, and strengthened the peace between humans and immortals. Theo grew older, graduated college, got married, had children. Lyra attended his wedding and met her nephews, though she could only visit at night. It hurt sometimes, watching him age while she stayed frozen, but she never regretted her choice. Valdren was her world, and the life they'd built together was worth every sacrifice. One night, nearly 20 years after her transformation, Lyra and Valdren stood on the mansion roof watching the city lights. It had become their favorite spot, the place where they'd first admitted their love and where they came when they needed to remember why they'd chosen this path. "Do you ever regret it?" Valdren asked quietly. "Giving up your humanity for me?" Lyra considered the question carefully. She thought about everything she'd lost: sunlight, warmth, the simple pleasures of human life. She thought about Theo growing gray while she stayed young. She thought about the weight of eternity stretching ahead. Then she looked at Valdren, at the man who'd shown her mercy and love, who'd tried to set her free and accepted her choice when she refused. She thought about the decades they'd had together and the centuries still to come. She thought about the good they'd done, the changes they'd made, the life they'd built in the darkness. "Never," she said firmly. "Not for a single moment. You're my eternity, Valdren. You're my choice, and I would make it again every single time." He pulled her close and kissed her, and they stood together under the stars. Two immortals who'd found something precious enough to fight for. The world would change around them. Centuries would pass. But their love would endure, constant and unwavering, proof that even vampires could find their forever. And in the end, that was all that mattered.